Accident of Choice by Literally Mad Lad on AO3. Episode 21. Chapter 8. All around me are familiar faces. Worn out places. Worn out faces. Mitsuki's house had a detached garbage over which sat an attic with two windows, one being a large set fence the street, and the other being a small, circular one facing the house. It seemed to be nearly decorated, and Katsuki could smell the residue of white paint on the walls. She dropped a hefty quilt on top of the cushion block at the far end of the narrow room. There, she had said, and promised to wake him up the next morning for breakfast. Katsuki had never slept on a bed before, and he missed the solid, secure walls of his den back in the cave. Despite that, though, he relished in the cocooned warmth when he burrowed into the blankets and sunk his head under the generate as much heat as possible. He couldn't do that as well with Deku and the assistant's clothes back at his den. Upon daybreak, Katsuki awoke to the sound of the stairs creaking and a knock, sounding on the hatch. It lifted with a curious, "Hope you're decent." Katsuki crawled out from under the covers to kneel beside the hatch and take the clothes Mitsuki offered. "Been a bit big on you, but give him a shot," she said. "Come on down when you're able. Door to the house is on the other side of the driveway." And then she was gone. Katsuki dressed and cautiously maneuvered down the steps. He stepped around the car and through a propped open door beside the driveway. He paused on the concrete to observe the road, which was just a few paces down to the sidewalk. The cars driving by were close, and Katsuki had heard them since the early morning. He could hear Mitsuki piling on like she had at the bar. She had warned Katsuki the night prior that her boyfriend might be over, and true to her word, an unremarkable man was in the dining room, sipping a cup of acrid coffee. Mitsuki's rambling paused the moment the screen door creaked open. Katsuki hesitated 1 foot over the threshold. Mitsuki cleared her throat and pointed to the man and said, "Masaru, the kid I told you about. Kid is my boyfriend." Katsuki let the door swing shut behind them. He jumped at the sound, which prompted a nervous laugh from Mitsuki, until Masaru pointed and said, "He's tracking blood on the floor." Katsuki and Mitsuki looked down. Katsuki raised a foot, the one that had been stinging like a bitch all morning. Sure, the skin tugged on the wound when he pried it off the ground. "Oh boy! All right, kid, take a seat. Let's get that checked out," she said, ushering him to the table where Masaru was staring at him like a hawk over the rim of his mug. Mitsuki snapped her fingers at him, and both of them jumped. "Masaru, help me clean up the floor, would you? I'll get the first aid kit." Katsuki watched her run off before focusing all his attention on Masaru, who gave him a wide berth on his way to grabbing a bottle of soap and a towel. Masaru glanced at him again before crouching down the nearest door to tackle the first of the fading footsteps. Mitsuki's first attempt at cleaning the wound nearly sent Katsuki's knee into her face. She jerked back, startled, and Katsuki clamped his hands down on his leg to keep it still. He gritted his teeth, seething as she rubbed alcohol on the wound. The sharp pang shot up his leg and sent shivers up Katsuki's spine. It faded with time, but that split second was enough for him to wish he had his fangs back to bite her. She wrapped his foot in gauze and gave him some oversized slippers to wear out of the house while they went shopping. Shopping was a bizarre experience. Katsuki had never seen so many colors in one place before, and every shirt he tossed into the cart was put back on the shelf by Mitsuki. So he hung on to the ones he liked the most to avoid that from happening. In the parking lot, she helped him lace up the shoes over a pair of bright pink socks. He rolled up his ankles around, surveying the sneakers as Mitsuki crouched beside him and her hands on her thighs, awaiting his judgment. "Good," he said. "All right, how's a haircut sound?" she suggested, and Katsuki covered his hands over his hair defensively. "No, that's fine. We've got some time to burn before work, so how about a snack?" They ate ice cream and burgers at a diner downtown. It tasted like heaven and felt like hell afterwards. He slept through it in the passenger seat of Mitsuki's car. He could have stayed there too, had Mitsuki not parked outside of the bar again. Yagi was there, sweeping underneath the tables to the tune of the jukebox at the far end of the bar. "Hey, kid, how's it going?" Yagi asked. "Good," Katsuki said. The kid's feet were all torn up. Mitsuki said. "What?" Yagi said, his eyes wide, following Mitsuki behind the bar. He glanced at Katsuki, who stared indifferent. "How did that happen?" "No clue. Looked kinda like rug burn, if you ask me," she said. She glanced back at Katsuki, who jerked her chin in the direction of the bar. "Come on, kid. Let me show you how to make the shrinkly temple." Behind the bar, she gave him a glass and tapped the texture, rubbing strips on the end of the counter. He put the glass there and picked up the red bottle she indicated to. She tapped a manicured nail near the bottom of the glass, prompting him to crouch down as he poured enough red syrup to reach her nail. When that was done, he clumsily hoisted the back onto the grate. "Now take this." She handed him a device strung up to the underside of the bar. He hovered it over the glass, and she pressed a button down on the end. A horrifying fizzle sound bubbled up and spilled into the cup before she lifted her thumb. The fizzling stopped. He gave it a try and, holy crapes, the power! The soda fizzled up to the rim, but he didn't cut the stream off fast enough before the glass started overflowing. "Sorry," he said. "That's what the rubber here's for," she said, tapping the rubber strip. She took the napkin and polished around the glass to dry it off. She handed him a sharp toothpick and unearthed the strip of cocktail garnishing. He had seen them the night before, but seeing them again made him want to eat them all. He scooped 5 cherries and didn't bother sneaking them into the drink. Out of curiosity, he scooped one of the green bowls in the batch when Mitsuki wasn't looking. It tasted like ass, so he spit it onto the sink, his tongue still sticking out. He grimaced when he caught Yagi watching him with an amused grin. Strangers started invading the place, so Katsuki was shooed back to his stool at the end of the bar. The waitress loitered over the time to time, and Yagi sat with him for a while until he sped picked up around them. Soon, every stool at the bar was filled, and Katsuki was approached by a stranger from the previous night. "Yeah, still a kid?" the guy asked, and Katsuki nodded. "Mind if I take Yagi's spot?" Katsuki shrugged. The guy took a seat. He put a hand out to Katsuki, which Katsuki stared at until the guy dropped it and said, "I'm Hawks. I work at the auto shop across the street." "Don't let him fool you," Mitsuki called from down the bar, her voice taller than any of the extras sitting near them. "He's always looking for trouble." "I was banned from this place a couple of months ago," Hawks explained to Katsuki. "Started a fight with some tourists. Fucking hate tourists." "Tourist," Katsuki repeated. "Yeah, what sucks about them being so close to the passenger train stop," he said. Spinning the stool around, he plopped his elbows on the counter behind him. He studied Katsuki's face for a long moment before saying, "Hey, you okay? Your eyes kinda—" "I asked Masaru about that," Mitsuki said. She had blazed a straight over to them before Hawks could get far. "You think the kid doesn't have the pigments in his irises or something, so it's just red like his uterus." "Gross," Hawks laughed. "Kinda cool, though." "Yeah, I know it's none of my business, but I'm thinking about asking Dr. Yazuru to do me a favor and take a look at his eyes," she said. "Just sort of noticed that he kind of misses things." "Like what?" "Dropping things, underestimating distances," she said, and Katsuki scowled at her. She blinked, as if remembering that he was sitting right there. "But only if you want to. I mean, the kid didn't want to go to the police. Who's to say he want a trip to the doctors?" "Right," Hawk said. When Mitsuki walked off, Katsuki glared at her until he was given clear range to garnish bowls. He reached across the counter to grab a cherry. Serves her right. Katsuki sat and watched through Mitsuki's shift until it was time for him to refill his sherry temple glass. He sunk behind the bar, and halfway through using the soda gun, a customer came up and asked for a Coke. Hawks hummed and said, "It's the second button, kid, and you're gonna need a new glass." Katsuki scowled down at the phenomenon of glass. They were all different shapes and sizes, and the one Mitsuki gave him existed at the other end of the bar. He wandered over to grab one. Mitsuki had her back to him, chatting up some party of 5 at the very end of the bar. He glanced at her as he took a glass, and when she didn't turn towards him, he made off with the glass and followed Hawks. Instructions to fill the glass with ice. And then he sat the glass on the rubber strip and pressed the second button of the soda gun. A dark, sturdy substance bubbled out. He overpoured, so he dried off the glass with a napkin and slid it across the counter to the customer. The customer was making idle conversation with Hawks in the meantime, and walked off with the non-commercial thanks. "You're a natural, kid," Hawks said. "Thanks," Katsuki said. "Let me teach you how to make another grin and how not to put it on my tab." Katsuki made a grin and tone, which point one of the party members at the end of the bar pointed to him and effectively alerted Mitsuki to their shenanigans. Katsuki hurriedly passed the gin toxin to Hawks before circling back to his stool before Mitsuki could so much as breathe down the back of his neck. Mitsuki glowered at Hawks. Hawks drags his eyes up to the ceiling and around, then entirely away from the bar. Mitsuki stuck the gin bottle back to the shelf before making eye contact with Katsuki. "Ask before you start mixing drinks. This rat doesn't own the place." She wiggled a finger at Hawks. "Neither do you," Hawks said. "Yeah, well, Yagi isn't here right now, is he?" she said. She walked off, and Hawks snickered. Katsuki was thrilled to find that he wasn't in a terrible load of trouble after breaking a rule. He decided to do it again later that night when Mitsuki wasn't looking, and made sure to succeed. Dr. Yayorozu. Okay, so I have a feeling we're gonna get to see how Bakugou goes back to Izuku. And I'm guessing, okay, Hawks being a character was something I was not looking at. I wonder if we're gonna get Izuku's point of view soon, because he probably is freaking the fuck out. I'm trying to think of other notes that I had. Other than that, I don't really... Oh. Mitsuki and Masaru aren't husband and wife yet. They're just dating, which, okay, interesting. We got Yagi, we got Hawks. Katsuki being a bartender, that was cool. Let's see. I don't really have much to think about or say, so I guess that's it. Okay, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.